The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker is an amazing game. It received 9s and perfect 10s from almost every magazine and website reviewing it. Depending on who you ask, the official HD remake on the Wii U was even better, fixing some of the only issues people had with the game. But what if I told you the game could have potentially been even better? And a lot of stuff that could have made it better was cut from the game. Dungeons, items, NPCs, entire islands. Yeah, Wind Waker had a lot missing from its final release, some of which was added back into the HD release, such as the faster sailcloth. Why was so much content cut from the final game? Well, it began production in the year 2000, soon after the Space World demo was shown off, which featured a more detailed version of Link and Ganondorf from Ocarina of Time in a sword fight. Aonuma was tired of this art style, and is actually on record as saying he hated the demo. He experimented with new art styles until the designer Yoshiki Haruhuna drew a cartoonish young Link. Aonuma loved the style, and began to work on what became the Wind Waker.
The game released in December of 2002, which means the game only had less than 2 years of development. For comparison, Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword, and Breath of the Wild all had around 5 years, some of which even went on for almost 7. Even in games that took over twice the development time of the Wind Waker, we still have dungeons, items, entire villages, locations, NPCs, and more content that is cut from the game. This could be due to the developers not wanting to delay the game any longer, or it's simply not fitting with the rest of the game. Very often, the cut content makes its way into future games, but sometimes, entire dungeons, ideas, and concepts are lost forever. So here is a list of the many things that Nintendo cut from the Wind Waker. If you're a fan of videos like this, please give this video a like, subscribe, and comment below to let us know what games you would like us to cover in the future. Because so much content was left out of the final game of the Wind Waker, we can't fit everything into a single video, so let us know if we leave out any of your favorites. Let's begin with the two biggest things, the dungeons. It has been speculated that Great Fish Isle was the original location of the Wind Waker's supposed third Goddess Pearl dungeon, because it was the home of Jabun, the keeper of Nehru's Pearl. Since the Great Deku Tree safeguarded Farore's Pearl, and the Sky Dragon Valoo protected Din's Pearl, it only makes sense for the home of Jabun to exist in a temple-bound place, so he too can supervise the care and safeguarding of Nehru's Pearl. The evidence in favor of this is as follows.
We will get to the interviews where creators give their explanation as to why the dungeons were removed. The dungeon that we know more about would have been a water dungeon located on Great Fish Isle. If we take a look at the map of Hyrule in the Wind Waker and connect a line from the Great Fish Isle to Dragon Roost Cavern, from there to the Forest Haven, and finally back to Great Fish Isle, we get a large triangle formed from the locations of the islands where we would originally obtain the 3 Goddess Pearls. Next, let's take a look at the 3 cleverly named Triangle Isles. The Triangle Isles are important because they contain statues of the 3 goddesses which we use to place the 3 pearls on. We have North, South, and East Triangle Isles. Together, they make up their own smaller triangle. When the entire map is drawn, it creates a Triforce, with the Tower of the Gods in the very center of the Triforce. This proves the location of the cancelled dungeon. However, because the dungeon was taken out of the game, Nintendo had no real use for the island, so when we get there, we find it destroyed, and need to seek out the new location of Jabun and Nehru's Pearl. An image of this can be found on the pirate ship in Tetris Quarters. This adds further evidence to the theory, as both Forest Haven and Dragon Roost Island are both home to temples. As far as the second dungeon is concerned, a lot of people still aren't sure on exactly what it is or could have been. Some think it could have been another fire dungeon, based off of the Fire and Ice Islands. Some believe it would have been something similar to a Shadow or Spirit Temple, with parts of it being included into the Earth Temple, similar to the ancient cistern in Skyward Sword being part Water Dungeon and part Shadow Dungeon. Here are a couple of the interviews mentioned earlier, where Aonuma discusses these 2 lost dungeons. He says,
I'm aware that lots of users wanted those 2 missing dungeons to be implemented in Wind Waker HD, but to be honest, we've already used those 2 dungeons in other titles after Wind Waker already. So right now, technically, they don't really exist anymore. We didn't exactly use them as is and implement them into another game. We'd add some of their features into other dungeons, so they're in different dungeons now. Elements of them must have found their way into Twilight Princess and Phantom Hourglass, but who knows, the remnants may be somewhere in Skyward Sword too.
During another interview, he gave a bit more detail about them as well.
Quite honestly, those dungeons we removed we used in other games, so we can't use them in this version. I've received many questions about additional content beyond what was in the GameCube version of the game, but our desire is to stay true of the story that was in the original. If we add dungeons, then that will affect other parts of the GameCube version, which we really want to stay true to. If it felt like there were maybe too few dungeons, then I feel that what was wrong with the GameCube version was pacing. It was thrown off because it took longer to get to certain dungeons. There was a waiting period, and then when you arrived there, the experience maybe didn't feel as big as you waited so long to get there. We're tuning the game to alleviate all of that. The pacing should feel appropriate to the overall experience this time. We need to tighten those gaps and make the overall experience and story feel tighter.
Another concept that would have completely changed the game was scrapped early in production. An interview tells us this: an older form of Link was sketched, but never modeled. Link was to physically grow during the course of the game at a more subtle rate than Ocarina of Time, but implementing this idea was too difficult, so it was scrapped. A few smaller details of cut content rounded up are the following. The Skull Hammer was confirmed to have a different name and design during the development phase. Link's clothes were to have the same color scheme as his clothes from the original Legend of Zelda. This was changed to the final color scheme late in development. As seen in the Space World 2001 trailer for the game, Link originally had a sneaking function, possibly created to be used in the stealth sequences of the Forsaken Fortress. This was later replaced with hiding in barrels. In the same trailer, Link's voice from Majora's Mask was used as a placeholder voice, as the final voices had not been recorded yet. Hyrule Historia contains concept art of 2 islands that were never included in the game. Stovepipe Island was planned to be a volcanic island of steam and smoke, with a hot spring lake and a valley of magma. Link would have potentially entered the volcano's crater, the same as he does with Fire Mountain in the finalized game. The other island, GameCube Island, was intended to resemble a Nintendo GameCube. This concept was later used in the game's direct sequel, Phantom Hourglass, with DS Island. A mysterious item marked only by Japanese text, translating to water boots, can be loaded and used through hacking. However, no model appears, and the animation for putting the boots on and off is the same as that of the iron boots. It is therefore possible that the water boots were in fact iron boots with different functions, such as sinking into water, as hinted at by its name. Until surprisingly late in development, the A button was mapped to the sword, with the B button being the roll command. Enemy swords can be picked up and used in the final game. In earlier builds, however, the sword button icon changed to reflect the enemy weapon Link was using. Going back to the scrapped dungeon we were talking about earlier, a scrapped water dungeon where Great Fish Isle stands in the final product was planned early on in development, akin to Dragon Roost Island and Forest Haven. 2 placeholder cell icons were found in the game disc, whose internal names suggest they would have been called the Zora Cell and the Tingle Cell. No information is known as to why these extra cells were not implemented, but Aonuma has stated that the GameCube hardware limited the boat's speed, which resulted in the Swift Cell in the Wind Waker HD. According to the original Japanese text, the Master Sword was sealing Ganon's minions, as it can be observed in the game, and not his magic. According to the English translation of the game, Daphnis Nohansen Hyrule, the King of Hyrule, says that the Hero of Time, after defeating Ganon, embarked on another journey and left the land of Hyrule, which could be a reference to Link's adventures in Termina. The Japanese text, however, mentions that the hero left Hyrule traveling through time, apparently referencing Link's return to his original time at the end of the game. The interesting thing here is that Majora's Mask and Wind Waker take place in 2 completely different timelines.
Big thank you to GameOverJesse for allowing me to be a part of this episode. For those of you that don't know, my name is Tony and I run the Hard for Games channel. If you'd like to check out some of our content, just type in hard numeral 4 games into the YouTube search and you will find us. We do video game reviews, live streams, but also a ton of Nintendo beta and development content, a lot of which has to do with Zelda. So I think you'll definitely find something you like there, and we'll see you guys next time.